And this also gets into the notion of properly basic beliefs as well. The first instance I ever heard of this was by Alvin Plantinga. Um, all right, and you also go into properly basic beliefs in your work. You say that beliefs have to start from somewhere. This reminds me of Aristotle's sort of principle where that if everything requires demonstration, you'll get an infinite regress where there would be no demonstration for anything.
Mhm.
Now, a common objection to Reformed epistemology into Alvin Plantinga's idea of this proper basicality is what is called the Great Pumpkin objection, which is accuses the religious believer of not offering any criterion for deciding which beliefs are a reasonable starting point for beliefs. How would you answer that?
Yeah, so first of all, I like what you said about Aristotle, and I think that captures kind of the spirit of the view really nicely. So the idea is that if to be rational, a belief has to be based on another belief, then every belief is going to have another belief, and it's like you're going to get this infinite regress. And so because of that, a lot of people think you have to start somewhere. There have to be certain beliefs that are kind of your starting points that aren't based on their beliefs, and that can be rational. And what Plantinga says, controversially but interestingly, is that one of those starting points could be the belief that God exists. And so that's really interesting. The thought would be you could be rational to believe that God exists, even if that belief isn't based on, other beliefs or other arguments that, attempt to establish God's existence. And so, yeah, one of the big objections to this is what's called, the Great Pumpkin objection. And so the idea is this: well, if belief in God can be this starting point, like what determines what can be a starting point? Like, couldn't we just start positing all these random beliefs as starting points and then say, well, we don't need an argument for that? Like, you don't need an argument for belief in God. And I think the Great Pumpkin thing is from like the Peanuts
Yeah.
comic strip. So Linus, it's like he believes that each Halloween, like this great pumpkin is going to come visit him in the pumpkin patch. And so then the question is like, well, if belief in God can be your starting point, then why couldn't Linus's belief that this pumpkin is going to come visit him be his starting point? Like, couldn't that also be rational? And so I think this is actually, it's a nice objection because it clarifies something that's really important about Reformed epistemology that I think can be missed sometimes. And the point is this: so just because belief in God is properly basic, that means it could be a starting point and be rational. That doesn't mean anything goes. That doesn't mean you can just believe whatever you want and it will be rational. Because even if they're saying this is a starting point, this is a place where a belief that doesn't have to be based on other beliefs, there's still going to be some account of what is required for that belief to be justified or rational. Um, and what's interesting about Reformed epistemology too is there actually isn't one account of that you have to accept. And it's consistent with a lot of different views in epistemology. So Plantinga's view is what's called proper functionalism. So this belief that God exists, even if it's a starting point, to be rational, it has to be produced by properly functioning faculties. So, for example, I see a lamp, my vision is reliable, my brain is working properly, so it can be rational for me to believe that there's a lamp. But if my vision is getting worse, I just turned 30, I look at something really far away and it's super blurry, my sight is not functioning in the way that it should because I can't see really far away things, and so then that belief would not be rational. So that's one kind of possible account. Another account would be the belief is just formed by a reliable process. So the process that you use to form the belief, it's one that is likely to produce true beliefs. So that's called reliabilism. And then another one, it's actually something I think we're going to talk about in the next question too. It's actually evidentialism. And so you can be an evidentialist, which says to be rational, a belief needs to be based on evidence. But you can still say that belief in God is a starting point because evidence isn't just other beliefs. Evidence could be it seems to you that God exists, or you have an experience of God, or these various different things, in the same way that I might believe there's a lamp right there without giving myself an explicit argument for it. It might just seem to me that there's a lamp, or I perceive the lamp. That can be evidence that there's a lamp without my belief that there's a lamp being based on an argument. And so the idea is that when it comes to the great pumpkin belief, that belief wouldn't meet these criteria. It's not, produced by properly functioning faculties, or it's not reliably formed, or it's not based on other evidence. And then, you would need to give an argument for this, but the Reformed epistemologist would want to argue, well, belief in God is based on properly functioning faculties, or reliably formed, or based on evidence. And one video I'll just recommend to the viewers on this. So there's a YouTube channel that my friend Jordan runs. It's called The Analytic Christian. And if you just type that into YouTube, he did a video with one of my friends who's named Andrew Moon. Andrew specializes in Reformed epistemology, and it's all about this great pumpkin objection. So they go into even more detail there. So if you're interested in this, I would recommend checking that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is actually very interesting when it comes to, because I originally heard about properly basic beliefs from Alvin Plantinga. He's sort of the gateway into that. I'm not sure if he came up with it himself, or if it was based on, it's based on the notion of a sensus divinitatis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So the sensus divinitatis, this kind of goes along with Plantinga's theory, which is the theory that there has to be this faculty that's functioning properly. And I guess I didn't go into all the details here, but Plantinga argues, and actually Augustine and Calvin argued this too before Plantinga did, but Plantinga argues that there's part of our brains, part of our minds that's designed to form beliefs about God. And so he gives examples like, you see a beautiful sunset and you're just like, wow, like someone created this. Or you get in trouble and you're like, God, help me. So, in these certain situations, he argues like that kind of triggers this part of our minds that's designed to, form beliefs about God, that God exists, or that God has these certain qualities or characteristics. And so then he argues that like when this part of our brain is functioning properly, that's kind of what explains why belief in God can be properly basic. But again, it's not like anything goes. It's not like there's a great pumpkin sensus divinitatis that would let Linus's belief be rational. But there's still a huge question to be had here, which is like, do we actually have this sensus divinitatis, and how would we discover that? I think that's probably that's a big thing that Reformed epistemologists need to address.
There's a good book on it, Born Believers by
Justin Barrett.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great book. I really like that book. I definitely recommend that one.
Yeah.